So we made our way to Comalcalco here, which is technically, officially, it's the most Western Mayan site of them all. It's also on the sort of eastern edge of the Olmec world. And what's really interesting about this place is that it was occupied from about 850 BC onwards, but only really the construction of the Mayan site began around 700 AD, or maybe 650 to 700 AD. They used no stone, they used clay and mud brick. But the weirdest thing is, when they were excavating this place in 1977 and 78, they found that over 3,000 of these so-called mud or clay bricks actually had inscriptions and hieroglyphs on them from cultures from all over the world. Now, this is very strange, but most of these dating of these ancient cultural kind of inscriptions from AD 0 to about 400. And so it's just one of these strange anomalies, even though the site was supposed to be built around 700 AD onwards. Of all the different bricks they found 3,671 that had inscriptions. 2,129, or about 58%, had Mayan hieroglyphs on them, many which we can see in here. 499 had Old World inscriptions on them. This is where it gets weird, because these were Arabic, Phoenician, Libyan, Egyptian, Ogham, Tifinagh, Chinese, Burmese, and Pali Burmese, and about 640 of the bricks, or 17.3%, had Old World inscriptions on them and Mayan hieroglyphs. So these were placed in the Mayan kind of collection. And there's, like, you think about it, only 0.5% of the site has actually ever been excavated. So there could be another 1 million bricks with inscriptions on them. So this really puts this whole site into a whole other world, that this was a cosmopolitan, global area of like a university here, teaching languages. This is something that Barry Fell concluded after he analysed many of these bricks. Here we have some sort of more animal inscriptions on some of these. Like, these are kind of 3D. They almost look like they're from Göbekli Tepe or Chontal Maya. We have like a turtle shell here, and some strange creature with a tail. So we have more examples of the clay bricks here from Comalcalco. These ones looks like they're said to be for commercial purposes, but the fact that so many were found here, like literally over 3,000, over 2,000 of them, with Old World inscriptions on them, is absolutely fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. You know, it does suggest that the Olmec world, as it was coming to an end, they spread east and south and became linked with other cultures. There were people, Chinese were coming in hundreds of years before, and the Phoenicians and the Egyptians and other cultures. Many of these do look very strange. They don't look typically Mayan. So I really have to believe Barry Fell that this was an ancient university. Thrived for 400 years from the era of Christ up until 400 AD. Here we have very strange looking piece. Again, these look like trading, but this has got some strange inscriptions on it, this one. And so do these two here. Very worn, you can barely see these now, but worth noting here. Some representations of animals on these particular bricks. 3D looking lizards, much like you see in Turkey at various sites, Chontal Maya, Göbekli Tepe and others. And these great beasts and beaks. Comalcalco is famous because just on the outskirts of the city, a rare Mayan burial site over 1,000 years old was discovered. And they've actually put some of it on display here in the museum, which is very, very interesting. And many of them were intact, even in this climate. So this is like serpent symbolism here on this particular brick. Difficult to see it clearly, but that's what it says. This is how they inscribed the stones. This is part of the great University of Comalcalco, dated between AD 0 and 400. And here's some examples of the stonework, or the clay work, which was hidden within the back side of the stones and the clay bricks in the pyramid, which you couldn't actually see. You know, they were on the other side, so only when they dismantled the actual pyramids did they actually find these bricks. They find these carvings, thousands of them. So it's incredible that they're still here today. And here's a very controversial beard. Again, this does suggest a cosmopolitan culture here, more than just the locals. It looks like with all the Libyan and Phoenician and Egyptian connections here, perhaps this is a representation of one of these travelers. So here we have another bearded gentleman. Very strange, it doesn't really happen in this part of the world, this kind of facial hair, so this could be a representation of Votan, Quetzalcoatl. It could just be one of the travellers that made their way here and was teaching or learning at Comalcalco. So the original name of Comalcalco was Joy Chan, which means surrounded by heaven or the circle of the sky or something along those lines. It was never Comalcalco, which means house of the griddles, which doesn't really make sense. But this is just one of the intriguing sites here on the Gulf Coast. It's about 60 kilometers from Villahermosa towards the coast. The mud bricks here, the clay bricks, just absolutely fascinate me. We just saw those in the museum. But the fact is, this really puts a different perspective on this part of the world. We've seen at the Olmec sites, there looks like there's evidence of West African features, the Chinese, even Vietnamese, and even with the Uncle Sam effigy stone at La Venta, it looks like European or Middle Eastern features. So it's very strange. And so this kind of cosmopolitan area that the Olmecs inhabited even later, towards the end of their reign, it seems Comalcalco came into play. So right at the end of the Olmec, in the early, very early Mayan, we find evidence of yet more global connections and ancient languages being taught. Comalcalco really is seen now by many researchers as a kind of ancient university, possibly one of the earliest universities in the Americas, if not the world. I'm also fascinated by the idea that although this officially is a Mayan site, it didn't really start getting built till 700 onwards AD, then how was it that from the ancient carvings and hieroglyphs and languages all dated to the first 400 years of the Christian era, AD 0 to 400? How is that possible? Was there a university in this particular area sort of teaching all these languages before the Mayans got involved? Because there are Mayan glyphs as well, and yet it seems like they were then, the Mayans, when they decided to build this site, they found all these convenient bricks and tablets that were already inscribed, already shaped, and they just built it into the site and then forgot about it and then hid it as though they didn't want anyone to know about it, much like the archaeologists do now, where many of these aren't on display, so you can't see the Ogham script, you can't see the Libyan or the Phoenician script, so it's a little bit frustrating, but let's go and take a look at the site anyway. So this, you can see the main courtyard, the ball court, and one of the pyramids here at Comalcalco. And within these pyramids, this is where these bricks were found, to have all these old world inscriptions on them. It's frustrating, we just realised what's going on here. It's almost like history repeating itself, where back then, the Mayans who came in hid all the bricks within the structure, so no one would know this ancient university was here, this cosmopolitan university. And even today, the bricks we want to see are not on display. They're no longer here. So this is one of the very frustrating aspects of this. They've been hidden again, this time probably in the basement or in the museum or in private collections. I think it's very important to actually be able to see all these bricks and study them effectively, see what was really going on here at Comalcalco, see if it was a world cosmopolitan trading centre, a university, or something else. Today, all we have left is this shell and just a few examples in the museum. So we're going to take a quick look round, see what else we can find, see if there's any other clues to this ancient cosmopolitan global university. Behind me is what's called the Popol Nar. This was like the house of ceremony, of meetings, of dances, and this is where the nobility and they would kind of come here and do their sacred dance and give laws and instructions out from the sacred spot. So I would imagine this is like the power spot of the site. Here it's almost as close to the top of the far pyramid, and you can just see the jungle canopy from here. And you also got behind, you'd be facing, you can't get on it now, but you'd be facing over towards the main valley enclosure. So yeah, this seems like it's a very, very important spot here. Popol Nar means house of the woven mat. Other ones like this have been found at Palenque and Uxmal and a couple of other Mayan sites. So this could be kind of like the sacred high part of the structure, almost like the king and queen in their castle looking out over the main populace of their Mayan counterparts. So from the Popol Nar here, you have the stucco steps here leading out into the main enclosure, now covered by trees unfortunately, but that leads out. And you can just see the other pyramid in the background over there. Very, very interesting. It still has the stucco painted red, some of it. Yeah, so yes, there were ceremonies and instructions and laws given out from this sacred spot, it would be the perfect area to reach out to thousands of people below here and going over to the pyramid over on the other side. So behind me here is some of the tiles from Comalcalco up on the Gulf Coast. Now this is a very intriguing site. We visited here as part of our Mexico tour with Brian Forrester earlier this year, but we always wondered where all the tiles were that were found there, because they're not on display in the museum, they're not anywhere else, and I just found this tiny little corner at the National Museum of Anthropology in Mexico City, and here they are. So we've got photos of every single one of these. There's many more, there's thousands of these, but what they suggest is that there's different types of writing from different cultures around the world. And they all met here, and this was like a sort of cosmopolitan learning university in prehistoric times, going back to at least 1500 years ago, or maybe even before. Could even have been influenced by the Olmecs because it's in the same region. But check these out, these are amazing. The ones at the top look just like they're from like Cotimbo, Silistani, or even Göbekli Tepe. So I wonder if they were demonstrating the stone knowledge they had and the carving techniques when they were at this university, and it was actually part of the curriculum. But anyway, if you're in the National Museum in Mexico, you've got to check out this. In the Mayan section, it's just around the corner. You have to have a look for it. But these are some of the original tiles from the very mysterious site of Comalcalco.